You ready, Lincoln? Lori stood in the hallway as she watched Lincoln finish packing his bag. He took a few shirts off the hangers, folded them into neatly in his suitcase, zipped it up, and put it over his shoulder. Now I am. He stepped out of his room and closed the door behind him. It was Saturday, which meant Lincoln and Lori were heading out to the city to visit the Cascades. As for Lincoln, that he would meant to see Ronnie Ann again, and as for Lori, she would get to see Bobby and reveal the news to him. Overall, though, they had both enjoyed their warm welcome that they always get from their family. They headed for the stairs and they were met by the parents at the bottom. Now remember, you could stay the whole weekend, but you'll have to be back by Monday for your appointment, okay? Rita told her. Lori nodded. I know. I just hope everything will go well. Glenn Sr. gave her a kiss on the forehead. I'm sure it'll be fine, he said. He looked over at Lincoln. You be on your best behavior, okay, young man? Lincoln nodded. Yes, sir. They both headed out the door, with their parents and sisters waving goodbye. Drive safe! Lori opened the back of a Vanzilla and began to get hers and Lincoln's bags into the van. Lincoln came over and grabbed them. No, Lori, I'll get it, he said, picking up his bag and putting it in the chair. In the car? It could hurt the baby. She then raised a brow. How do you know that? I've been reading some mom's old pregnancy books, said Lincoln, and it said that picking up heavy objects can hurt the baby. Lori sighed and rubbed his hair. You don't have to do that for me, Lincoln, she said. I'm the one who should be studying all this stuff. But I want to, he said. You're my big sister, and I want to make sure you and my baby niece or nephew are okay. She smiled. I appreciate it. Just don't get too worked up about these things, okay? He nodded. Okay, he said. Can we go now? Yeah. Get in. The Cascades only lived about 3 hours away from Royal Woods, but as the car ride felt like an eternity, they would find themselves singing along to the radio, telling stories, and sometimes just talking. Lincoln had his feet down on the dashboard with a comic book in hand, and his face was already becoming a bit pale. Put the book down. Lincoln looked over at Lori. Lincoln, please. I don't have time for both of us to get sick today. Lincoln then put his book down next to him. Sorry. No, it's okay, she said. Just so you know how you get car sick, and I've been not feeling good to myself. Mom packed us some snacks, he said, pulling out a bag from under his feet. I think she said you need to eat crackers so you don't get sick. He then reached into the bag and pulled out a pack of peanut butter crackers and started to eat some, held one out for her. She took it and started nibbling on it. Thanks. She then looked over at him. So are you excited? He nodded. Yeah, I can't wait to see Ronnie Ann again, he said. And we're going to have so much fun. What about you? She thought for a moment while keeping her eyes on the road. I'm excited, but also nervous, she said. How do you think it'll go? She thought for a moment. She and Bobby had been dating for a few months, but it wasn't enough for him to stay with her. And he was the father of the child, and her soulmate, so she knew that he'd be a little shocked at first. But she was hoping that he would be excited. Another thing she was worried about is if he would come to stay with her. It was so sudden that she wasn't sure if he would want to give that up, what he has now. She knew that he would be a wonderful father, no matter what happens. Lori, hey! She was broken out of her thoughts at the sound of Lincoln's voice. He was waving his hand right in front of her face. Did you hear what I said? Oh, sorry, Lincoln. I've been having a lot on my mind right now. He put a hand on her shoulder. It's okay, sis, he said lovingly. You know I'm always here to talk. She then looked over to see a smile across his face. He had never failed to see adorable when he first didn't need to be. I literally don't deserve you to have you as a brother, Lincoln, she said. You're always too sweet. She reached over and pinched one of his cheeks, not to mention cute. He then felt his face getting warmed and brushed the hand away. Save that for the baby. They both laughed and smiled. It looks like we're almost there. Lincoln leaned up before the windshield. I could see their building. A few minutes later, they pulled up in the Bondia. They began to get out, where they met by Bobby and Ronnie Ann. Bobby ran up to Lori, and Lori almost fell over as Bobby ran up to hug her. Babe, he shouted. He hugged her tight. I've missed you so much. She hugged him back and then put her head on his shoulder. I missed you too, Boo-Boo Bear. Lincoln and Ronnie Ann stood nearby. Ronnie Ann stuck her tongue out as she watched the scene. They began to go all cheesy again, she said. At least we're not like that, huh, Lamo? Lincoln nodded. Yeah. You want to come up to my mom's room and check it out, the new games I got? That'd be awesome. They ran up to Ronnie Ann's room, leaving Lori and Bobby alone. They released from the hug and linked their hands in front of each other. We have a few hours to do whatever we want, but my Bubba knows that you guys were coming, so she's making dinner. Lori then knew that she would love that. Rosa's food has always been amazing, but when you're pregnant, even better. It could have been the perfect time to tell the rest of the family too. That'll be great. Bobby released her hands and then went back to the back of Vanzilla. Let me get these for you. He grabbed hers and Lincoln's bags and then carried them inside. She followed them behind them. The Cascades building was felt so welcoming. This wasn't the first time that Lori or Lincoln had been there, but they had to come to each other. The family had always prepared for lots of decorations and food. She could already smell the food as she entered the hallway. Rosa was already make sure that they got fed when they came to visit. She wouldn't want to let anyone leave hungry. The smell of tamales and tamales to chorizo filled the air, and it was mouth-watering. They turned to the door to the left and they entered the living room. Ronnie Ann and Lincoln were sitting at the table. They were already busy stuffing his face. Hey guys, Lincoln said with his mouth full. Lori was about to wave to them when she felt her hand being kissed. Ah, mi corazon. She then looked over to see Carl. You still look beautiful as ever, he said. How about you ditch Roberto and King with me today? Lori shook her head. That's sweet, but she looked at Bobby. I came here to spend time with him today. Carl scoffed and stepped away. You be my one day. She rolled his eyes. He's never gonna stop, isn't he? Probably not, Bobby said as he tried to hold in his laughter. Lori, Carlota yelled as she came into the living room. I missed you. She then reached out to hug Lori. I missed you too. I've got some new outfits that you totes might need to try out. Rosa came over and broke into their hug. She wasn't doing anything much until she gets to eat first. Of course, Alberta. She then grabbed Lori's hand and then led her over to the table, sitting next to Lincoln. She was met by a plate with definitely more than enough for one person. Now eat, Rosa said. Then you two can do whatever you want. Thanks, Miss Cascade, Lori said as she looked up at the plate in front of her. It was filled with rice, enchiladas, tacos, and many other things that she didn't know the name of. Bobby sat down next to her. Now, there was a new place that I want to check out tonight, he said. But you probably won't feel like eating anything else after this. We can do whatever we want, Lori said as she took a bite of the burrito, just as long as I get to pick too. Of course. Wow, babe, I didn't think I've ever seen you eat that much before, Bobby said as he watched Lori eat the second plate. I don't think I ever have, she said, reaching the napkin to wipe her mouth. I didn't eat much before we left this morning. Are you okay? My stomach hasn't been letting me eat much recently, she said, and I was feeling pretty sick earlier. Maybe you need some fresh air, Bobby said. Well, as fresh as the city air can be. They laughed. Let's go. Lincoln sat on the bed as Ronnie Ann dug into her box of games. Ah, there it is, she said. She held up the game cartridge. She walked over and handed it to him. Lincoln's eyes went wide as he looked at the title. Gold Turbo 23? He exclaimed. This is the best new racing game. I got it a couple weeks ago, she said. I haven't played it yet. I was waiting for you. Wait, what are you waiting for then? Lincoln said, and then jumped out of the bed and went out to the game console. Let's go. Lori and Bobby headed out to the city, and it was his turn to pick somewhere else first. We would like to eat there a lot, Bobby said, pointing at the restaurant on the other side of the street. They just opened up a new arcade there. Nini hasn't even tried it yet. I know she and Lincoln would love it. Those two really have something, don't they? Yeah, they are, Lori said. It's kind of surprising me when I found out Ronnie Ann was the only one who was bullying him at school, but I'm just glad I'm glad to see where they are now. Link is a good boy, Bobby said. I could see why Nini likes him. Lori laughed. She really does like him, huh? She said. Well, I wasn't sure if she was told you. Yeah, she did, he said. Has Lincoln ever said anything to you about her? She shook her head. Nope, but he can be pretty bashful when it comes to that kind of stuff. He reached over and grabbed her hand. Did you ever talk about your siblings about me? Yes, I did, she said. It was Lini first. She's not that great at keeping secrets, but she didn't tell anyone. Lini is a sweetheart. She sure is. I've been practically irresponsible since we were kids, Lori continued. She was happy, and some of my sisters weren't. Well, they didn't like me when they saw me, did they? He asked in a sad tone. She then turned and looked at him. It's not that they don't like you, she said, putting a hand on his face. It's just I have had so many bad boyfriends in the past, and they wasn't sure about you. I get that, he said. He took her hand and kissed it. Ronnie Ann was the same way with me. I'm just happy that you turned out different, she said lovingly. You're a good guy, and I'm sure that I can call you my boyfriend. And you are a good girl. I'm glad that I can call you my girlfriend, he said. They shared a kiss. Come on, I still have to show you something. He grabbed her hand and then led her farther down the street. They've ended up in the place to be seen outside. What is this? It's an outside aquarium, he told her. It's one of the first of its kind, and I've been dying to check it out. There was a large filled area filled with tanks of various sizes. They watched the people point into the fish, and the kids stuck their faces into the glass. Oh, look, he said, looking at the tank. I know how much you love seahorses, babe. Lori looked at the seahorses, which made her slowly turn their way around the tank. It was true, they were her favorite animals, but there was something about them that she found cute. They're majestic. I love them! She then pulled out her phone and gestured him to stand next to her, and he put his arm around her and they both posed right in front of the seahorse. That's a good one, Bobby said, with a goofy smile on his face. Hey, I want to go see the jellyfish next. She then grabbed his hand as they went over the way they came. They noticed a small child on the ground. Her mom seemed to be busy with a baby, and the little girl was upset. That, of course, Lori saw the look on Bobby's face and released his hand, walked over to the girl, and kneeled down. Hey there, sweetie, she said softly. What's the matter? The little girl sniffled and wiped her nose on her arm. My mommy won't buy me another ice cream. He looked over and saw there was melted ice cream cone laying on the ground. The mom heard the conversation, turned around. It's not that I won't buy her. I told her I just didn't have enough money for another one. Bobby got up and walked over to the nearest ice cream stand and came back with a vanilla cone that was big as her head. The little girl's eyes wilted up as she handed it to her. Thanks, mister. You didn't have to do that, but thank you. It was no problem. It broke my heart to see such a sweet girl so upset and sad. He then felt a tug in his pants and looked down to see a little girl hugging his legs. He then patted her on the head. Come on, sweetie, we have to get home. Thanks again, mister, the little girl shouted as she ran off to her mom. Lori stood back and then watching the scene unfold before her eyes. On outside, a simple smile inside, her heart was full. He didn't know it yet, but he would be a father soon, and she wouldn't have picked a better guy. He waved goodbye and then walked over to Lori. That was very sweet. It reminds me of Ronnie Ann and I were little, he said. I was that little girl before. Lori smiled and grabbed his hand. You have a big heart, especially when it comes to kids. He smiled back. Yeah, I do. She yawned. I'm actually getting kind of tired and hungry, she said. Do you think we can head back after this? Whatever you want, babe. Aw, come on! I won that fair and square this time. Not according to the game, you didn't. Lincoln pouted as he watched Ronnie Ann dance on her feet. And his face turned into a smile, though, and they started laughing as they watched her. She stopped and looked at his face, and she could feel her cheeks turning red. He's kind of cute when he laughs, she thought to herself. He wiped a tear from his eye. Gosh, I'm having so much fun. Glad to hear it, she said. I am too. Lincoln paused for a second, and then his smile turned to a frown. What's wrong? Ronnie Ann asked, who had a frown on her face. Nothing, it's just, he began. I wish we didn't have to live so far away sometimes. Oh, she said. I think about that too sometimes. Lincoln then shook his head. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to ruin our fun. Hey, she said. She slid closer to him. She didn't notice that her hands were touching. Lincoln tried to ignore the warm sensation on his face, but as he tried to listen to what she was saying, you didn't ruin everything, okay? She said. It's good that we can talk to each other, and that's what friends do. I guess you're right, he said. I'm just worried about for nothing. If Lori and Bobby can make their relationship last this long, then I'm sure we could do the same with our friendship. I don't want to lose a friend. Ronnie Ann wrapped her arms around him. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. He hugged her back, and his hand was laying against hers. Good to know. The sound of the camera flashing could be heard. Both kids looked up to see Ronnie Ann's Ty Freda standing in the doorway with her camera in hand. Ronnie Ann, why do you keep telling me he's not your boyfriend? She said. Well, they both felt red on their faces. But because he's not, Ta, Ronnie Ann said. Sure, sweetie, she said, laughing. It's almost dinner time. Rosa wants you to come over and help. Ronnie Ann sat back on her bed, and her arms were crossed as she huffed. I have no privacy here. Lincoln then placed a hand on her shoulder. I know how you feel. Trust me. Come on. I want a taste of those tamales. 2 raspberry, please. The vendor guy handed Bobby 2 slushies and then walked over to Lori, who was sitting on the bench. Here you go, babe. Thanks, Boo Boo Bear. He then sat down next to her and she looked at him. Her body was filled with anxiety and also anticipation. You can do this, Lori, she thought. This is just a time. Just tell him. She reached over and grabbed his hand. I've had so much fun today. He then looked over and straw out of his mouth. I had fun too. He then could feel her hands started to shake. She sighed. I came here today not only to spend time with you, but it's because I have something important to tell you. He put his cup down and grabbed both of her hands. You can tell me anything. She bit her lips and squeezed his hands. Bobby, She paused and took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. Bobby didn't know how to exactly react quickly as she thought he would. His eyes didn't go wide, his mouth didn't drop open. Instead, he pulled her into a hug. Babe, are you for real? She nodded. Yeah, I made tweets, she said quietly. You're not mad? He shook his head. I'm not mad at all. I remember what happened the last time we came here. You said you were sick and I had a feeling. She then hugged him back. I've been scared too, Bobby, she said, her voice breaking. And to know that you're not mad is a big relief to me. He then pulled away and cupped her face into his hands. It's scary. I'm scared too, but he kissed her cheek. I'll be here with you, every step along the way. His eyes then got watery, and so did hers. She pulled him into another hug, burying her head into his shoulder. My parents said you could come live with us, she said, so you can help with the baby. He thought for a second. That would be perfect, he started. But I already have a job working here at the bodega. Maybe I could work something out with my Obeto. I'm sure you can, she said. You can always get another job in Royal Woods too. Yeah, I've worked everywhere at that town, he said, but I'll do whatever it takes because that's my baby. Lori sniffled. Don't I deserve such a good guy like you, she said. You're going to be a great dad. He paused for a moment. I'm going to be a daddy, he said. I'm going to be a daddy. And you'll do great, she said, pulling away. How do you think your family will take it? I think they'll be surprised at first, but I think they'll be okay, he said. We can tell them before dinner if you want. She nodded. I think that would be the best. He then pulled her in for a kiss. I love you, Lori. I love you too, Bobby.